I thought it would be fun to do a one verse again, only actually I'm going to combine this one into something different. And you know what? The one verse doesn't always work, does it? Not very often, unless you're just going to like one of Jesus's sermons or one of his little pointed clips along the way. Follow me and I will make you fishers of men or something like that. Most of what, there's a block usually. There's a number of things. Same with Buddha or Lao Tzu or something like that. If you go into, like the very first chapter of Buddhism, the verses that are there are actually larger blocks of teaching. It's not just a simple line. Something like, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of God. You can take that one verse and interpret it and get the teaching out of it. However, they're not all that simple. They get more elaborate and they get more drawn out. And that's what we're looking for. There's a culture back then that are intelligent people this is their gaming platform, their media, their whatever. They don't have technology or anything that beyond hand tools, rocks. There's no electricity, nothing like that. I think we need to really treat these stories as something big and not as simple. We treat them too simply, and we're not getting what is in there. They're very deep. And that is something that I feel very confident about, but there's no records of that necessarily. Where I get that is just in a lot of time that I have spent pondering and in isolation. I have spent a lot of time solo camping, days at a time. And during those times, you can begin to wrap your brain around the idea that if you are living day to day with no resources and you're just trying to eat and work on a day-to-day basis and survive and you do not have other things, imagine that life for yourself 2,000 years ago, that you've got this brain capacity but not the knowledge and not the technology. What are you going to do? Sit and stare at the wall? Okay, so what I want to do is the wedding at Cana. This is in John, and I've talked before and said I really want to stick with Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the canonical Gospels. But there's something in John, and I don't want to get into this too much. The Romans knew this nested material. Everyone knew this nested material. Again, it started in ancient Mesopotamia from the Sumerian Epic of Gilgamesh and the Enuma Elish, the first creation story. Genesis, Egyptian lore. It is in Buddhism, Taoism, Christianity, Islam. Everybody knows what's going on except for us. They knew something back then that these patterns that we're seeing, that's what I'm going to do a little bit on this one right here. The Romans know that this material is in there, and as they are writing things, they are making sure it stays in. Okay, we can find the core material is there, as well as the carrier shell that is called Christianity is there. What I am going to suggest is that they very deliberately made sure that this template was there, at the same time creating a religion that made it so that it was very appealing to grasp that religion and to hold on to it. What emerged when Christianity started was first sin. So right off the bat, Christianity starts as fear-based. You're going to die. It's not your fault. Something happened long ago, but we got your salvation. Just come here. That seems like child abuse almost. You're taking an empty child and conditioning them that, and they're convinced of that, and they live their lives based with that fear as the basic core of their life. They don't know it. They feel good. Why? Because they're doing what they've been told to do. That is a part of Christianity. And it creates it big. The material is still there. But the candy shell is so tasty, nobody wants to let it go. They know what they're doing. Let's take a look at something here. I want to read the wedding at Cana, and let's interpret what that is. This is turning water into wine. This is one of Jesus's miracles. And I'll be using the NRSV, the New Revised Standard Bible. And today's lesson comes from John 2, verses 1 through 12. It is the wedding at Cana. On the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water," and they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it had come from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they remained there a few days. As we look at it, the elements that I think about right off the bat is, what is this? They're at a wedding and there's water and wine, and I'm thinking to myself, where have I seen this before? This is kind of similar to something. A wedding chamber, a bridegroom, that's one story, but there's also something about wineskins and conversions, and there's things that are odd that I'm thinking that are in other places that I want to look at, and I've looked at them and I've interpreted them, and let's go do that right now because they all do fit together. They're a way of cross-referencing and looking at the repeated nature of this teaching that is within the self-healing template. Okay, the next one comes from Mark 2:18. And there's going to be a chunk of verses here. This is one of those cases where a single verse is not carrying the teaching. There's a larger lesson going on, so it's being carried over a number of different verses that sequence together. And in order to maintain the teaching cohesion, we have to cover the whole thing. So let me go ahead and do this. And this one is called The Question About Fasting. Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting, and people came and said to him, "Why do John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" And Jesus said to them, "The wedding guests cannot fast while the bridegroom is with them, can they? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast on that day. No one sews a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak, otherwise the patch pulls away from it, the new from the old, and a worse tear is made. And no one puts new wine into old wineskins, otherwise the wine will burst the skins, and the wine is lost, and so are the skins. But one puts wine into fresh wineskins." All right there we got wedding, bride, bridegroom, wine. There's a group of things that sound similar. These things belong together. What do they do? Okay, this one, the question about fasting, is one that I have interpreted previously, so I'm going to go here and let's just take a look at it. All right, I have really come to like this group of verses as a teaching set because it has a couple of layers of things in it that's fairly easy to see to anybody who's ready to take a look at this and is open to the idea. Now we're going to take all of these, they're going to mirror our psyche. They're going to mirror something inside, but let's walk through it. And let's start at the first one. Now John's disciples and the Pharisees were fasting. And people came and said to him, "Why do John's disciples and the disciples of the Pharisees fast, but your disciples do not fast?" Okay, that's a question about why don't your disciples fast and the other ones do. And what does Jesus say? The wedding guests cannot fast while the bridegroom is with them, can they? And he really doesn't directly answer the question. This is almost like, what? What's the wedding guest have to do with the fasting and the bridegroom? And it's almost a kludge. You look at it, and I think it's intended to be this way. There's a verbal something going on. And in the first verse, what we have, John's disciples and the Pharisees, which is going to be representing the old way of life. John's disciples and the Pharisees, that's the physical world, and you're going to be turning to go onto the spiritual path. You're going to turn from outward looking to inward looking. And that's not an important part, this one right here. The important part is the reply when Jesus said to them, "The wedding guests cannot fast." This is where it transitions from outward to inward. The first verse is looking outward right at your conscious. The next one, it turns right inward. So this layer right here is transitioning you from looking outward to looking inward. Those cumbersome kind of looking flow in the verse. That'll show up in other places. It will. Keep an eye out for that. You go, what? That doesn't even answer it. Watch for it. It's transitioning from outward looking to inward looking. Okay, so this goes on the wedding guests. Who are the wedding guests? The bridegroom. We've got these elements we need to look at. These are going to play out in our psyche, remember. Even Jesus is going to play out in the psyche once you turn it in. What is Jesus? This is no longer a supernatural thing. It is now an elemental template for us to play out inside of our psyche. The wedding guests are temporary. The wedding guests are somebody that's going to be gone. Why do they need to fast? They need to go. They need to go away. When this is playing out inside, the bridegroom is something that doesn't emerge in this teaching, but in other teachings as you're conscious, with the bride being the subconscious. And that initially you are married, but as life becomes such a way that you're acting out in ways that you regret and you have become split, you are two, you are now not okay. That is analogous to having been divorced, and you want to have a marriage again between the conscious and the subconscious in the bridal chamber, in the mind. That is where this will play out in the psyche. And it's really just an analogous way of saying we want to combine our split selves. We want to get rid of the things that have us divided. And they can't do that. They cannot fast. They cannot leave as long as the bridegroom is with them. As long as we are still engaged in our old life, it's not going to go away. It's not going to change. As long as we keep engaging with our old habits, our old life, our old wherever we come from, whatever it is we're trying to emerge from, clutching on to desires, fears, all of those things that make us feel angst that are just in the way of you going, I'm okay. Those are the things. The days will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then they will fast on that day. Yeah, once you decide to separate from what you've got going on in the past, now you can start leaving the past behind. Does that make sense? Let's move on to the next one. This one sounds weird too. No one sews an unshrunk piece or a piece of unshrunk cloth on an old cloak. Okay, we are going to become component parts of this. We've got an unshrunk cloth, an old cloak. Right there. That's the first one. We must be one of those two. We're going to either be the unshrunk cloth or the old cloak. Which do you think it would be? We're the vessel. We're the big thing. We are an old cloak at some point in time in our life. And if we want to do something new and say, God, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm just going to ignore the past and move on and try to put something new in, new relationship, new life, new job, new something, while you still have stuff that's unresolved that's going to come back and haunt you. The patch pulls away from it, the new from the old, and a worse tear is made. Your life becomes worse as this happens this way because we're trying to band-aid ourselves and pretend like it's not there. What happens? We move on to, and no one puts new wine into old wineskins, so suddenly we just jumped away from being cloaks to being a wineskin. We want to put new wine, a new way of being, into our old selves. We are the old wineskin, but we can't do it. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the same way as the jacket, the coat would try to leave our past behind. We try to hide our past and put a new life on top of it. It falls apart. It gets worse. The new wine is lost, and so are the skins. Yeah, it was... Trying to change is difficult. It's hard to move on, but one puts new wine into fresh wineskins. We got to drop the baggage before we move on. That's the lesson here. That is the lesson in this verse. So if we take that then back to the original one, first of all, on the third day there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Third day, keep an eye out for 3. It's going to appear everywhere. Many hundreds, not over 1,000 times in the Bible. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana. It won't be gematria. It's going to be referencing something else. Third day, when the time was ready, or something like that. It's going to be a number that's a placeholder for a different mental concept that plays out in the psyche. It's not about the outer world. It's about something up here. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. The mother of Jesus was there. We're going to have a wedding. Cana of Galilee is going to be analogous for we are now Cana of Galilee. There is going to be a Cana of Galilee out there. It plays out that way. People will go, look, it's a real story. There was a Cana of Galilee. Bingo, it's a true story. The story is written there. There was a Cana of Galilee. Third day, there's a wedding. We're looking at, when we're ready, Cana of Galilee up here, we need to have that wedding, the combination between the two selves, the conscious and the subconscious that have split, the Adam and Eve that have come apart and had offspring, Cain and Abel, that are all parts of who and what we are, our good and our bad side. Same thing we have going on here, that we want to make this marriage happen. But who is the mother of Jesus this time? Remember, we have those 5 component parts, but there's a higher self and a conscious self. The conscious is the one that has to do the healing. Jesus is going to be our consciousness. The mother is going to be our higher self. That is who is taking the analog in this case that's taking on that role. So Jesus and his disciples, those are my qualities, my characteristics, my sense of right over wrong, my fear, all of those things. Those are my disciples. We've all been invited to the wedding. Let's go take care of ourselves. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. So what I'm going to suggest here is that all of these are playing out inside of us. And there's a point in time where the wine is our way of life, that is something that we are living. And hang on, let's keep moving ahead and let's see if we get to a point. It says they have no wine. They've run out. There's something that is just deficient there, right? We see that. We'll leave it at that and move on. The lesson is ahead. And Jesus said to her, woman, what concern is that to you and me? My hour is not come yet. So here he is saying it's not my time to do any healing or anything like that. His mother said to his servants, do whatever he tells you. Why would he say something? Actually, let me back up. Why would he say that? That's a part of us that is not ready to go. It's we're fearful. We're not ready to turn inward or something like that. But that's what's happening right here, is we're making that transition to turning inward. And the mother said to the servants, do whatever he tells you. So the higher self tells the people who do the healing, those parts of us that we interact with and go, I've got to watch this stuff come and go. I got to manage my pain, my shame, my hurt. The higher self is telling, that's a lesson for us for our higher self to tell us to interact with ourselves. And now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. I don't know what 20 or 30 gallons are, but those are going to be analogous for something in here. And I don't know what. It doesn't show up enough for me to word. I don't need to chase that down. There were 6. That might even be something there too. But the stone water jars, rites of purification. Okay, we've got that. Jesus said to him, fill up the jars with water. So they filled them up to the brim and dross them out and take it to the chief. They took it. What ends up happening here is that the water was changed into wine in the vessels in a purification rite. And this is like transformation. This is changing from one state to another state. And we've changed the water, it's okay, to wine, which, that makes me feel good. At a wedding where we're trying to combine the conscious and the subconscious. And what do we move on to? And he said to everyone serves the good wine first and the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine till now. So here we go. Most people's lives, we live our lives. We serve the good wine first. We start off with good wine, but the inferior wine, after we become drunk, after our guests, after the pain, the shame, the hurt, all of those things that we keep inside of us have become what they are. They're out of control. They're drunk. They're out of control. Everyone serves the good wine first and the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you have kept the good wine till now. So it's time to heal. It's time to go, it is now time to do this. The good wine is finally going to get rid of the old wine. It's kind of blending a little bit with the wine vessel story, where you clean out the wine vessel, before you put new wine in it. And in this case, it's the same kind of variation inside, though. It plays out in the psyche. Okay, and then it says, Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed him. This is a first of a healing step in John as you're moving along, and it becomes the hero's journey. If you look at the sequence of it, it's going to be very early on, and this is the point where it's time to turn inward to begin the journey. And the first thing you're going to do is to start clearing out your pain, your fear, your issues, and start addressing that stuff. And that is what this verse means when you turn it inward. Outwardly, 33,000 Christian denominations. I don't know what it is. I know what it is inwardly, and that's it right there. Okay, so ultimately what we're dealing with here are healing lessons, the flood lessons. Flood comes in. Your world is inside, full of all of these bad things that you've accumulated. You need to start over. A big flood represents clearing all of that out. It's a little more interactive that way, if you take it that way. It just seems like, this is something you're going to find is an emergent lesson over and over again. This purging, this cleaning, this emptying oneself out. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Those are going to be exactly what needs to happen, and it's said in complicated ways a million different times. If you look, you can also see that, they knew what they were doing. They were very carefully putting this in there. They're creating that journey. The last step, they move along to the next place and hang out a few days. That's going to sequence in here. You go through a myth, and they're going to go from an island, then sail to another island, and then sail to another island. There's things that happen along the way that are necessary for that sequence to take place. That's what's happening here. They're just not sailing. They're on foot. They're in the desert. It fits. Same analogs. Don't get so close to it you can't see it. It's really hard to see when you don't have a lot of exposure to a lot of material. And the people that say, I'm not going to do that, I don't like those things, they'll never see it. You got to look a lot, and then you see it and go, okay, I see what they're doing. It's everywhere. Yeah, it is. Fun stuff. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. I did. I like this. Yeah, I like that grouping of verses. I'll see you in the next one.